Rosemary, do you want to kick us off this morning?
I will be happy to. I want to welcome everybody here to our weekly open table discussion where we are united by the commitment to end homelessness, which we haven't pulled off yet, but it's a lot closer when we are all together working on it. One of the things that I've missed, and I think everyone probably missed about our in-person interactions, is that we had time at the end of the meetings to hang around and give each other information about what we're up to and what we need. And we don't have as easy a way to do that in this format, at least if we're new. So we were just discussing the chat, and it's some of the problems with it. If you put things in too early, then people won't be able to see you or what you've put in. But one of the things we do at the beginning of meetings is to welcome anyone who's new here for the first time or who is coming back after being away for a while, to let us know who you are. And so this is not a long time. It's meant to just identify you. And if you're representing a group that you're working with on issues, to let us know what that is. And then you could put other information in the chat and the kinds of things that you would like to be working on with other folks. So we have a lot to do today, but I'd like to invite anyone who's new or who may be speaking today, who've been invited to speak, to identify yourself. And there's no order to this, so go ahead.
Hello, my name is Benjamin McLean. I'm new here at Vallejo Vocation, and I'm just calling, just chiming in to meet new people to establish relationships with as we work toward ending homelessness and meeting people where they're at.
Welcome, Benjamin. Do you go by Benjamin or Ben?
Benjamin's fine.
All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, one last thing about today. I learned that it is Caregivers National Day. Now, that could mean a whole lot of things. And care can also be making good trouble. So today's a good day to remind yourselves and remind all ourselves of the people in our lives who provide care, whether they're outreach workers or people with folks who are very vulnerable who are being with them, and to thank folks and also to thank ourselves for our commitments. So I'll give it back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Rosemary. So at this point in the meeting, we always turn to everyone to get some feel for what's happening this week on the streets. I didn't see or hear from Nathan to see if he was going to be able to join us today. So I think this will just be an open conversation. A lot has happened in the last week since we got together. We had snowstorm, it disappeared quickly. But I'd be interested in hearing updates from folks who are doing outreach. I see Mike with his hand up, just to kind of get a feel for what's been changing this week on the streets and where we are going into the weekend. Why don't you kick us off, Mike?
Yep. I think you touched bases on the snowstorm. It worked out extremely well. We did have the approval from the city to go to 10 more beds. And then Sunday was the last night we housed them, and we spent most of Monday relocating everybody, in which we were able to do. And thank you to the Salvation Army, which took, I think, 9 people. And we're able to coordinate and work back and forth, get everybody transported down there. And it worked out great.
Very good. Irene, I see you have your hand up. We're still not hearing you for some reason. You are
unmuted. Can you hear me now? Sorry.
There you go. Yeah, good.
Irene Morrison, Tacoma Housing Now and Food Not Bombs Tacoma. Food Not Bombs Tacoma was really active the last week, more so in Hilltop than we have been in the past, but also it appears that the Tacoma police celebrated the melting of the snow by showing up to one of our camps. And it sounds like they might be facing an eviction under the 509 bridge. So we're really worried about that. The weather is not magically going to get better anytime soon. Any information you all have about that would be appreciated.
Thank you, Irene. Jeffrey?
Yeah, a couple of visits to 38th and G encampments. A couple have moved out, some tents in need of replacement. Overall, they went through it pretty well. They've had some difficulties in the overnight hours with somebody shooting pellet guns at them and driving by yelling and throwing rocks. That's been consistent, and they, of course, are not anxious to call the police for any reason. There is no trust between them and the police right now.
Out of curiosity, Jeffrey, are there advocates for that group that are in the community right there that might be willing to do like a neighborhood type watch or something like that?
There have been people supplying some food, and I will try and touch base with them and see if maybe we can do something more to provide some kind of security.
Yeah, sounds like we don't. The tough thing is if people are feeling emboldened to do things like shoot at them with air pellets, then we wouldn't want them to escalate that.
Exactly. So yeah, I'll put a little more effort into trying to gather some local neighbors who are friendly.
Of course, the challenge is if local neighbors are going to call the police, then we might have the same issue.
Go into the same stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone else with news from what's going on in the streets this week? And I may not see your hand, so just feel free to speak up. Alan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to mention the change in venue and that sort of thing so folks are aware?
Sure. So the CCS Family Housing Network Day Center, drop-in day center for families, is temporarily relocated due to, we're doing some remodeling in our facility to make the day center bigger, better, and brighter. But we are temporarily located for the next 2 or 3 months at the former MDC Healthcare for the Homeless on Tacoma Avenue. The address is, help me out, Rob.
2342 Tacoma Avenue.
2342 Tacoma Avenue South, just up the street from Goodwill.
Yep. Great, thank you, Alan. And anybody else with thoughts from what happened on the street? I'm curious, did anybody hear anything anecdotally about people who had severe health issues because of the cold? That's good news. Great. So I don't want to belabor the point, but if you do have other updates and want to put them in the chat, feel free to do that. And we will move our conversation along. I do want to provide, there's a quick update to our agenda. Robert Taylor from Seattle YMCA reached out to me this morning to say that he had a work issue he needed to deal with. So he can't be with us this morning. We'll reschedule him to talk about the Arlington Drive project on the east side in a coming Friday meeting. So we will skip ahead and have Garrett talk a little bit about formalizing the coalition's role in ending homelessness.
Thank you, Rob. So this is a follow-up to last week's presentation of our expanded role in the community. And I'm just going to go through, I don't know, 8 minutes of kind of what we're doing, why we're doing, and what decision we would like the coalition to make today. And then we'll have a little bit of time for discussion and hopefully end with a vote. So I'm just going to jump in and we'll have again time for questions and discussion at the end here. And so hopefully you're seeing my screen all right. Awesome. This is a PowerPoint. Sorry. Not only that, it's a PowerPoint with animations, which I should be embarrassed about, but I'm just rolling with it. Leadership role in the community. So it's hard to phrase this without sounding critical, and that's not really the goal. There's just a bit of a leadership vacuum, and we've been largely reactive in how we do homelessness in Pierce County. Not completely, we do lots of good things, but we've been taking advantage of funding when it's available and going after it, right? We react when funding's available. We take proactive roles in making our programs best practices, but we've not really had any group in Pierce County taking the initiative to build a system to end homelessness. And so that's really the role we're talking about the coalition taking, is understanding the full need and trying to build out to it. And so if my little circle here in this diagram is the current homeless system, we see that our homeless system need is much larger, right? Probably twice as big, hopefully not, but substantial. And we have not as a community ever sat down to plan how to meet that need. And so that's kind of a role that the coalition needs to take. We've done some things, right? It's not like we haven't done anything. So my little orange circle in there, right? That's, you know, the strategic planning the COC is doing, right? They have a strategic plan to end homelessness, but it's really how do we react to additional funding coming in and how do we make our programs work better, which is really important work, but it's a part of the whole that we need to be doing as a community, which is figuring out how to meet the whole need. And we do some pieces of the pie, if you will. I got a little piece of pie here, which is the veterans. And we do a good job with veterans of understanding the need and working hard to bring the resources in. There should have been some stuff launching this time last year, but COVID-19 threw a monkey wrench into pretty much everything. But that effort's underway. And we do the same thing with unaccompanied youth and young adults. Like that work is really pretty mature, like good work to understand the need, good work to find resources. And that's, again, somewhat proactive, but somewhat reactive, right? The state's been pushing that agenda. And so we've responded and taken up the work. And same with the veterans, right? The Veterans Administration, right? Federal government kind of requires us to do that. So we're reacting to requirements of our funders. And it's not to say those things aren't really good. It's just we need to do it for everyone, right? So the rest of the pie, we've got to have a plan on how to end that. And so the first of the motions that I'm going to bring to us today, that the steering committee, that we all are bringing to ourselves, that sounds weird, today, is that we need to lead on the plan. So lead on creating and implementing a plan, a regional Pierce County plan to end homelessness. And that leading, right, doesn't mean we do it and everybody else follows along. That's not the kind of leadership we're talking about. The kind of leadership we're talking about has all of the stakeholders involved, right? And the first group are the people experiencing homelessness, because when we talk about meeting everybody's need, we really, really, really have to be listening to what that need actually is, right? When you put a shelter out that helps, 80 people in a community of 1,500 that need shelter, you can fill up those beds, right, with almost any kind of program. But when you need to build a program to house the last 80, right, there's a little bit more need to make sure we're absolutely able to handle everybody. And coalition members, obviously, we're going to be a huge part of doing this work. Government partners, right? If the city of Tacoma and Pierce County Human Services don't buy in, and have a huge hand in this, right? We're going to really be behind the 8 ball on this, or whatever that phrase is. Nonprofits, obviously other nonprofits. So we have a lot in the coalition, but we're talking about multi-care. We're talking about folks that do, domestic violence work, right? All of the people that work on the periphery is the wrong term, but a lot of our partner agencies, substance use, right? People coming out of prison. There's great work that happens in all these areas that homelessness is tied to, and businesses. They're impacted by homelessness, and they can have a role in mitigating, said the wrong word, in serving those folks so that the issues that we're seeing aren't present. And pretty much everyone, neighbors, like on the steering committee, we have someone that's just really concerned, and they belong here, and everybody and their dog. And I put a pit bull here because we've got pit bulls to serve, and our shelter system struggles to handle the pit bulls with people, and that I'm just circling back up to it's all about making sure we're meeting the needs that we're identifying, and that the people experiencing homelessness are articulating and being part of the process, part of the writers of the plan. So our second task, our second thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to organize our coalition to do that work, right? Being a largely non-structured, somewhat structured grassroots organization is amazing, but I think we need a little bit more structure in order to pull some of this off. And so we need to get together to plan that out. So we have a steering committee, which is, again, open to everybody. And we're going to charge them to propose a governance structure and a staffing model. And what that's going to look like, who knows? I think that's really just going to be driven by what that set of needs identified. So, we talked a little bit about 501c3. We can operate under the, fiscal sponsorship of associated minutes. Like any structures that's going to meet the need is where we're going to go. Our third thing that we're talking about doing, which seems strangely tossed into this mix, but I think is really important, is ending street homelessness by November 1st of this year. That date was picked because that's when the cold weather starts. And the objective behind this is a change in how we, as a community, have addressed shelter and homelessness. When I first came on, I was convinced that spending money on homelessness in shelters was a bad move. We should really be spending money on permanent housing. And there's a beauty in that way of thinking. But after 5 years of working around homelessness, it's clear to me that shelter is really important. And I love the states that are right to shelter, or cities that are right to shelter. So this objective is that, and I think our community needs this. I think everybody needs this. People experiencing homelessness need it, right? Because encampments, and I think they destroy things. Right? I think they're very damaging in our community. They destroy the health of the people living in the encampments, not having access to hygiene, not having temperature control, not just the mental health of not having a door you can lock, or a place where you belong, or a place where you're safe. It's just, I think it does so much damage. I put agency in here, and I don't know if that's the right word, but when you're struggling with safety and all of the things around living where you don't belong. I mean, Jeffrey was just talking about people being shot at by pellet guns, right? You can't possibly be working on the things that that you probably need to do, right, in order to get yourself out of homelessness. And so, and then our public spaces are getting damaged, and our sidewalks and our parks are there for a particular purpose, and it shouldn't be where people are living, right? It's not good for them, and it's not good for our neighborhoods. And the last thing I think is trust. And I don't know that I can articulate this well, but I think our government and our community and our people experiencing homelessness and our service providers, there's some lack of trust in there. And some of it has to do with just the continued knowledge people have of the need in the community that's not being served. And I think we can build trust by making sure that we're serving everybody and that people have a place they belong. I think that'll build trust with our neighbors, with our businesses, with our government, and I'm hoping significantly with the people experiencing homelessness, that we're seeing their needs and we're able to help to meet them and get them, right, the security and the safety they deserve. And again, this is a bit of a change. This is a painting from the Hermitage, I think, which is a mess of horses and people. And this is, I think, this is a description of my brain when I try to explain why, and this is the conversion of Paul, right? Like sort of when his change from prosecuting Christians to sort of embracing Christianity. And so this is my drawing of I think a change our community needs to make, or the change I've made from being sort of anti-spending money on shelter to this is a really important thing for us to do, and to spend money on permanent housing. Let's just spend lots of money we don't have, right? That's my plan. I just want to say a little bit about what we ain't going to be. And what we're not going to be is we're not going to be just housed people putting plans together for people that are homeless. We're not going to be just white people and putting together plans for the whole world of people that are experiencing homelessness. We're not going to be funders, right? We're not going to try to get money and sort of be kingmakers or control, control contracts and things like that. I think the city of Tacoma and Pierce County do beautiful with that, and that's not where we're trying to occupy. And we're not going to operate programs, right? We're not going to be competing with other agencies to run shelter, to run permanent housing programs. Our role is leading the collaboration and leading the plan and helping all of us in the community put the plan together. So just to reiterate, what we're talking about is us voting today for the coalition to take the leadership role in the creation and implementation of a Pierce County regional plan to end homelessness. We've bolded that because we like that phrasing. Charging the steering committee to propose a governance structure and staffing model, and ending street homelessness by November 1st. And again, street homelessness is a weird term to me, but we're talking about people will be in shelters, they'll be permanently housed, they'll be in encampments that are safe and sanctioned, they'll be in safe parking, they'll be in tiny houses, right? They'll be somewhere they belong with access to restroom facilities. And I'm now going to hand it off to the closer, Maureen Howard. This is me dreaming I wasn't in that good of shape to be looking good sprinting like that. Maureen Howard.
I don't have a PowerPoint, and I probably could never have run track, but thanks. I think what we're trying to do is we're simply saying that one of the things that we have talked about for a long time is leadership and who should lead. And sometimes it seems like it's really petty. It's like not being able to get a full list of shelters because the county can give you the shelters they fund and the city can give you the shelters they fund, but nobody's responsible to give you all of the shelters that exist. And that's pretty petty, except that it isn't, because everybody in the community wants a solution. We might not agree on the solutions, and we see the rhetoric when we try and put something new in place, in a new place. So if the summits were anything, they seem an opportunity to engage more people. We've got the open table already, and we've only got 2 rules around it. You're committed to ending homelessness and to working respectfully. We will never all agree on how shelters should operate. We will never all agree on the best way to do case management. We will never all agree on the best allocation of money for permanent housing, but we will all agree, and do agree, I think, that, as Garrett said, every human being needs a safe and decent place to be. And every human being needs to know that within a reasonable amount of time, that place is going to be permanent and appropriate for them. That they're not going to spend their lives going from shelter to shelter or encampment to shelter and back to encampment or whatever the sequence is. That we're going to see that people are housed. We may not have a literal legal right to shelter or a literal right to housing, legal right to housing, but we will act as though we do. And we will begin by listening to people tell us what it is they want, whether we want to hear it or not. And this is, I mean, we have the experience. We know how to do this. We need more housing developers. We need more housing operators and managers. But we've got some, and some of them will grow. And we've got others. I don't know if you caught the news. Lehigh just bought a brand new, unused 76 unit apartment building in Capitol Hill, 300 square foot units. They just bought that. And the first people moving in are people experiencing homelessness. And they want to work in this county. Bridge Housing is a sophisticated housing developer and operator. They want to work in this county. There are others out there. We all may not know them, but we know how to find them and who the people are who can link us to them. So I think, this is the best thinking we have to offer right now, which is hopefully that everybody pretty much agrees that this is our opportunity to take the leadership, to develop this plan, this overarching strategy into which everybody who wants to end homelessness in this county is welcome, and to begin to end street homelessness by November 1st. That sounds pretty outrageous, doesn't it? But how many organizers are in this group? And what is it we're told? Be bold. So let's be bold. So, Garrett, I don't know if you want to take any questions or comments, or Rob says yes.
Yeah, why don't we just
Yeah.
open the floor up for folks? I know there have been a number of comments in the chat, but I think this is a great time to hear from people about concerns and thoughts around these proposals. Teresa?
I was trying to give other people who don't usually talk a chance, but I thought maybe we need to prime the pump a little bit. What I love about this is that we have partners working within county and city and other municipalities. And we have partners who are working within those systems who really care about this and are struggling as hard as they can to make these things that we're talking about happen. But we keep trying to get up to the upper levels of all of these places to say, you need to listen to the people doing this work. And I always have felt like a supplicant in those ways. This initiative is saying, instead of us continuing to beg people to listen to the ideas that we keep hearing from the people who are actually doing the work, why not just say, acknowledge this group as having some weight in these things, having something important to offer, being your own free think tank. So I very much appreciate the way that Garrett described it, so that we are committed to not competing with the people who are providing the services, that, that it's not what he called a king-making thing. That's the clearest, most clear message I've heard about this. And I really appreciate all the time that it took to wordsmith that into a way that says what we really want to do. So thank you.
Hi, this is Tina with the Landlord Liaison Program at Associated Ministries. I'm going to start off by saying I am supportive of some type of centralized coordination and leadership in regards to addressing homelessness here in Pierce County. At this time, I'm not supportive of the current proposal. I have grave concerns that groups of community, including the Continuum of Care, their Racial Equity Committee, haven't been engaged in a discussion. That when I look at the current proposal, there's no reference to racial equity. And I really think the proposal itself needs an assessment of racial equity to use a racial equity impact assessment, where we're looking at intents are really great. I'm all for the intent, but really being able to dive into exploring the unintended impacts that this current proposal in its current form may have, and that it may perpetuate institutionalized racism versus addressing it. I did, I know there was mention last week and in the proposal of Built Zero, I did see that they convened in October of 2020 to ensure that they're centering racial equity in all their work. So if we're really looking at a Built Zero model, they are working on the racial equity aspects. So my concerns is that there's no mention of racial equity in the current proposal, and racial equity starts before a proposal. It starts with engaging communities of color, those most impacted. And so I'm not going to be in support of the current proposal. I am in support of doing the work on the coordination and leadership and what a proposal would look like to do that, though.
A point of clarification, Tina, are you speaking for yours? I presume you're speaking for yourself, because we do have Mike Yoder's comments.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Larry, I see your hand up.
Thanks. Just briefly speaking to Garrett's specific objective, I think that's really valuable to tackle a concrete, hard problem like that. It will help focus the overall planning energies. And to the point that was just made, as I was watching Garrett's wonderfully well thought through proposal, I was also thinking about racial equity, which we know every place you look, including being frozen in Texas, is that Black and communities of color get shafted first. So my suggestion is that we consider a two-part hard startup requirement, that by 1 November, if that's the date, be the winter date, we not only have solved the chronic homeless on the street problem, but done that in a racially equitable way. And I believe that that's not just idealism. If you actually tackle the problems needed to redress the racial disparities, you will be solving the core problems. So that would be my suggestion, is to broaden the 1 November hard requirement to include genuine racial equity.
Thank you, Larry. Other comments on the initial proposal and any concerns? Or I see Al's hand up first and then Jeffrey.
Pitchford's hand is up too.
Got you, Donald.
Thank you.
I support the proposal and think it's very well crafted. There are a couple of things that come to mind as I've listened and as I've read it. And one is that we really need to actively partner with some of the other coalitions, such as the Black community coalitions of various sorts, and get a genuine partnership going between coalitions here. The other thing that I see as missing from the proposal and from our own mindsets in some ways is, I just posted a thing that I got from the Frameworks Institute that talks about how to change public mindsets. And the research that they've done indicates that if you want to change the public mindset, you first of all have to start with the public and have a strategy for trying to influence public opinion and inform public about what you're trying to accomplish and how they can assist. We don't really have a public relations arm in this plan, but I think we probably really need one.
Thank you, Al. And then I knew Jeffrey was next, and then Donald.
5 years ago, I was involved in the community quarterly meetings with Associated Ministries on their steering committee. And one of the things that was really apparent to me was everything was in silos. Churches were in silos, city and government services were in silos, and virtually nobody talking to each other, each one doing their own thing. One of the things that I see as a blessing is in this coalition, everybody has a voice and everybody can hear it. Now, does that mean that this is the ultimate model for how we should do it? Unknown. But I do believe that these open forums, especially in this format of the Zoom meetings, where everybody can be seen and heard, is especially helpful. And I've really appreciated being a part of this. Yes, we need to have a structure of some form. We have to have a way to be leaders in this. Many here are working directly with the homeless, and those voices need to be heard to those who make the decisions. And I hope we can take the lead with the city and the county in a regional approach rather than just a street by street approach.
Donald. Maybe Donald stepped away for a moment. Donald, when you have a chance, we can hear from you. Sean had a comment he wanted to make as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think one of the questions, and maybe Garrett, you can help clarify this because I know you have experience in a background. And again, so I'm asking on behalf of myself as a citizen of Pierce County, not in my role with the county, but Garrett, so in our experience working with the Ending Veterans Homelessness Task Force, we know there's a lot of different questions around how do we define ending homelessness, and are we talking about a functional zero as the task force set out to be? Could you elaborate more on like what do you, practically speaking, what is that? How are we as a coalition defining that?
Sure. So the proposal is basically the Built for Zero model, which uses functional zero. So the idea behind functional zero is you sadly never eliminate homelessness, but what functional zero means is when somebody does become homeless, they have immediate access to shelter. That's the one piece. And the second piece is they have immediate access to an appropriate permanent housing intervention. And that can be as light as diversion, one-time assistance to get transported somewhere where they've got permanent housing or move into apartment, or as deep as permanent supportive housing, right? So that's the goal, is you become homeless, you have shelter that's appropriate, right? Appropriate with choices, right? If you're a heroin addict with the pit bull, there are places you can go and where you belong. And, maybe not all the choices, right? There will certainly be places that don't accept sex offenders and things like that, but there will be places. And again, an appropriate intervention that's the least you need in order to become permanently housed, right? That model of people need to be doing as much for themselves as they can, right? Which is stretches your dollar and actually is much healthier for people, research shows. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and then so I guess the next follow-up I have is, you said this is somewhere in the presentation, I don't remember it quite off the top of my head, but you mentioned funding and how this is, you're not seeking to be a funder You see the county and the city as, and those are their roles. However, like, again, based off the work from our task force, we know that these types of initiatives are expensive. Like, we were really like weighed down by the fact that this just costs a lot of money, and there's a lot of resources that go into ending homelessness. And like, we looked at models, we looked at Portland, we looked at Austin, and they poured resources into it. And so, with the coalition not, what do you mean when you're like talking about not being a funder, and how does funding bear into this? What are you trying to do then to get those resources, knowing that we can't do it on our current budget?
Absolutely. So not being a funder means that we're not going to try to go out and get money for ourselves, but we are going to go out and try to get money for the system. And so our funding approach is going to attempt to unify a voice with the request of what we need, so that when we lobby the federal government, which will be a ridiculously slow process and maybe not fruitful, when we lobby the state, when we look at businesses, we can say how that funding we're asking for fits into our plan to end homelessness, and we ask for it in one voice, right? The coalition, the agencies that make up the coalition, the lobbyists for the low-income housing authority, or for the Tacoma Housing Authority, the lobbyists for the city of Tacoma, for Pierce County, we all speak with a common voice to increase the resources. Yeah, and it's twofold probably, right? It's at least, right? And so it's a massive lift that we've never tried, right? So you don't get what you don't ask for, but you also don't get what you do ask for, right? But having everybody trying together with a sense that that with that money it'll be transformational, I'm hoping will kind of get us all lined up and make us more effective at getting resources. That's so again, not taking a role in bringing the funding to us, but taking a very active role in bringing the funding into the community. However that is, it's direct grants from the Veterans Administration for more resources for veterans, right to a provider, great, right? Is it more ESG money to run shelter that goes through the county and the city? Great.
All right, I'm going to see if Donald can unmute and provide his comments.
I'm sorry that I'm just all over the place this morning. My guys, they're hustling, right? Trying to find other jobs because they've been laid off the other jobs. And so we just working together, trying to keep them, where they need to be. But my question goes all the way back to where they were talking about helping the Black community. And this is something that I've dealt with for the last 5 years. Us writing our own grants, not getting them, being promised different things from the coalition to help us, and they get us halfway through it, give us a shopping list, do this, and then all of a sudden you don't hear from them. And some of the members on the coalition know what I'm talking about because I've talked to them about it. For 5 years, we've been coming out of our pocket because no one would help us. So we got 2 houses, 12 rooms, a homeless facility downstairs. In Lakewood, a 5-bedroom. And I've been asking for help to house my man for at least 2-3 years. And they've had all the help for us, but we don't get it. And so we come out of our pocket. My church, my pastor is in a hole because our passion is to help the homeless, the youth program, the gang program, which I wrote for the gang task force. And we're doing this on our own because it is our passion. But I'm on the homeless committee and help everybody that needs help from me, no matter what. And those that know me, they know I do, without saying anything. But when y'all brought this up this morning, this is what we're dealing with. They get funding. We ask, they say, okay, and then we never hear from them again. And to me, that's putting us to the side. But it doesn't stop me. My passion is to do just what I do, coming out the gangs in LA, out of Compton, you know, the institutions here, until I found myself. But just like we felt like we would get the help from everybody that I dealt with in the homeless community. I mean, with the coalition. But it's hurt me just to see, you know, money going here, there. And when we asked, he's told yes, but nothing ever happened. So that's my concern. And when the gentleman started talking about that, I mean, we're one of the top 5 houses in Tacoma, but we don't get help at all. So that's what I needed to see. Oh. And I have a bunch of ideas. So as far as the homeless and being hands-on, because we are, you know, we feed over 500 families a month, and then we supply 4 food banks, and we're doing all this out of pocket. So we got a wraparound program, but we're not being helped with it, and we're going in the red. Thank you for hearing me.
Yeah, thanks for that input, Donald. And one thing I would say is, you know, if you have an interest in the time, it'd be good to have you join us with the steering committee as well, as we do this work.
Yes.
Thank you, Donald.
Thank you.
I see Carolyn with her hand up.
Hi, Donald, that was very heart-wrenching. And hopefully if I support the coalition organizing, and I think, you know, once they do, it seems that they could help facilitate things like that much better than we are right now. I am not experienced in providing this service. I've only jumped into this in the last 2.5, 3 years. And so I had to ask a lot of questions. I asked many of you that are on this coalition. And some of my observations as, you know, a naive person in this is that a lot of people, if given housing, actually succeed. I didn't realize that. The public doesn't realize that. The other thing I observed is that there were 30 to 90 day wait lists for shelters. And women are sleeping out on the street, you know, vulnerable. I couldn't believe it when I realized that we couldn't even have enough space to allow someone to choose to be safe and dry. The other thing I noticed is people couldn't tell me how much does it cost to have someone housed versus not housed. We have no data like that for our area. Some people, you know, gave me some general numbers that were in some national studies, but there is no hardcore data that we can measure and hold our government accountable to. We need to understand what we're trying to tackle before we can tackle it and track it and see if we're doing well. The other thing that I observed is that that it is hard to pin down who's doing what. You know, how it was really hard for me to get my head around how someone gets into the system and how they get tracked for success. And there were like these really awkward stories that they would get bumped out for some reason, then have to start all over again. So the system, in fact, I saw somebody trying to get some help on the street, you know, over Target of all places, in the rain, with blood literally coming out of their swollen legs. And I called 211 and nobody answered the phone. So I I just see a lot of good hearted people with super experience wanting to do well. And my sense is that if we did have a more organized structure, we'd be able to fill in the gaps that are not being filled in now, both in leadership and in coordination, and painting a picture for the public about how this is actually a win-win situation. So I really applaud us. I think, yeah, it may not look perfect at first, but that's why you build in ways to process, improve, and self-evaluate and make adjustments. You know, you don't set it all in stone right away. So I think, you know, rather than make sure it's perfect, let's go forward with what we know and what we can do and build in a process for improvement and accountability and tracking and getting some of this data and helping the narrative in the public. Because I believe that if you were able to educate people like me, that it actually does help both, you know, society and those that are unhoused to get housed. And here's the data, but we don't have anything to show them. So anyway, I'm a yes vote all the way.
All right, other comments and questions? I see Colin. Then Teresa.
Yeah, I appreciate what everyone's saying. You know, listening to everyone talk, it's definitely, yeah, there's just a lot out there. I think, Carolyn, to your points, I mean, yeah, I think what you're talking about is kind of, as you are educated in homelessness, you find out like what's really going on out there and how truly tragic it is. And I think, you know, Tina's points I heard loud and clear, and I think that's extremely important. And I appreciate everything that is touched on around that. I would say that I'm supportive of the plan. I think that this is a great thing. I have no doubt that Garrett and Maureen are right on the same page. Not to speak for Tina, but I'm guessing that that's all stuff that's on their mind when this is being talked about. And I'm confident, kind of to Carolyn's point, that those are adjustments that can be made even in real time, like right now. And I think tapping into everything that Tina had said is extremely important to this, along with the other things that we heard for the exact reason why. You know, it's amazing to hear the stuff going on in Lakewood, and I mean, I'll be honest, I'm unaware of a lot of that, and it's awesome. I applaud it, and we do need to find ways to support smaller programs like that, especially when they're coming from people of color doing amazing things like that. I was just going to say also, as far as Sean from the county, I think those are valid points. I would push back and say that what this would do is, and I think it was kind of touched on, really open us up to, there's a lot of alternative forms of funding. When we talk about looking around to other areas of the country, there's a lot of untapped funding. We have a lot of great funding that's outside of government, but there's a lot of untapped. So I think that's some of the stuff that the coalition can do, is it can really pursue and bring new funding sources to the table that county government simply cannot do, right? And then I would also say, we do a good job of funding across the board, but I'd say we do a good job. We also miss a lot of gaps. And I think one perfect example of that is safe parking, right? That's not something that, if we did not have other funding sources, no government entity was willing to do that. And I would definitely argue that it's a successful program. But even right now, with the NOFA that's out today, with the county or other county application or funding sources, as I know of right now, and I don't, it's not anyone's fault, it's just the reality. Safe parking still isn't something that can be funded, you know? So when we look to try to continue that program, that's a great example. You know, there's gaps in our current funding system. So money's always going to be an issue. The last thing that I would say is the only concern I have with the plan is that I love the functional zero. I love the November 1st. But I don't want to lose energy or sight on some of the immediacy of the things that we know also need to happen, you know, when we're talking about doing some of these. So that's my concern. I don't want, I would be fearful if the coalition lost some sight or some energy on some of these immediate things that we know need to happen. Hygiene centers, you know, areas for people to safely be, like not in November, and I don't think the plan's saying that, but like now, like next, we need to keep pushing. So that's my only concern, is that we might lose sight of that stuff, but I'm definitely supportive of the plan.
So I want to just add to this that yes, if we're going to get to this in November, we can't start working on it in November, and we are already working on it, Colin. And I think that's the energy that is trying to be tapped into, is that going forward and adding to. And I want to just offer a friendly amendment to the proposal that, and I don't know that we can sit here with as many people as we have in this room and wordsmith it today, but I think we could say that we could perhaps approve it conditionally, that there be language added. We have several overrepresented groups within homelessness, and no one more than people of color, because they're also overrepresented in the group of people who've been incarcerated. And incarcerated people are people who have been incarcerated are 10 times more likely than your average person to be homeless. So we could, I think it's, and also people who with disabilities of one kind or another, and people with, we have, of course, people who have mental health issues or substance use disorders, those sorts of things. So maybe we could say, we're gonna make it more clear that we're gonna look at equity within all that we do. And we could make it more clear that we're gonna work with every existing agency out there, because I saw some stuff from Cynthia and others about making sure that we hear from the people already engaged in the work. I think it's clear that we're going to work with the county and city. I don't think anyone would question that we're saying that, but maybe it's not clear enough that it's not just the people who are currently in the coalition, it's also trying to find those other resources. So, and I also, I want to say that I love that Valerie's eye is always on the important ball of getting people housed. And there are a lot of people in this coalition who feel that too. So I hope it's also clear that we are not talking about this as a solution, that this is something that we need to do immediately to keep people from dying on the street. At the same time, we need to work on all of the things that we know have worked in other places, and keep our eye on that ball. That was long, sorry.
Thanks, Teresa. I see Alan has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted some discussion, and there's been dialogue in the chat about the COC and how this relates to the COC. And I guess I'd like to hear more about that. And, you know, is this proposal kind of an alternate COC? And I'm remembering back in the day, those of you who have been around a long time, when the coalition meeting and a COC meeting were actually in the same meeting. So I'm trying to distinguish, I guess, the difference in purpose between this proposal and what the COC is, or what the COC should be.
I can jump on that one if you don't mind. Hopefully many people know me, but if you don't, besides being the executive director of homeless services at COMP, I'm also the chair of the COC and have been for the last 2.5 years. And I'm also a big part of the coalition. And there's been a goal to sort of do that at a macro level for a long time, to merge at least the efforts of the two organizations, if not the full operations. The COC did a huge push about the 5-year plan in 2019. And what the original goal was like to address the stuff that's being proposed now, like to be the leadership void that was out there, to be the all-encompassing model for all the plans, to recommend all funding options to go through the COC. And really what happened was that was too big of a task for that organization at the time to take on under the structure that we were in, as well as to really make sure we kept our eyes on the funding that the COC had, as well as expanding money that we're eligible for. So our 5-year plan went from the 5-year plan to end homelessness to the 5-year plan, sort of like a process improvement plan to increase our funding, to be a more functional COC, to be more expansive, to be top of mind when, for example, a group of mayors come together and decide they want to run a task force to end homelessness. But where the COC is now and where we want to be really aligns with this effort. It's not parallel. We hope to have totally overlapping to the point where I hope that these two efforts become one. The main thing that I would say is that the amount of energy and ability of the coalition, having its free structure as well as having its just like the really staunch advocates who are bought into being here every week, has really made a better platform and a runway than we have been with the COC to do the macro level work. Most of our work is internal to make the funding from HUD better, more efficient. We have an awesome 5-year plan to basically double the resources available through that portion, as well as to make sure everyone who receives an intervention through COC funded services remain stably housed in 2 years. Like, we want to make ourselves better and more efficient, but it's to double what the COC funds would still only be about 30% or so of the need. And it won't address things like everyone's shelter by November and things like that. So I don't know if I answered it, but we're in concert, we're aligned, and we're seeing kind of a path that hopefully is coming to emerge versus straight parallel tracks. That I really, really hope there's like, my big goal has always been like, how do we get these two communities to be one large community? And I think this is a big step in that direction.
Ron?
So I see Maureen, yeah.
Just to kind of remind people, we're not asking folks to endorse a draft document. That document has draft all over it. It's simply a beginning place. And all of today's conversation informs what eventually happens. And there'll be many more conversations informing it. What we're proposing is that the coalition take a leadership role to create this regional plan, this county-wide plan, on which we can agree at a future time, the exact nature, description, all the wordsmithing, everything that needs to be in it. But what we're asking for right now is, will we take this leadership role? That's one question. The next question is, will we spend some energy looking at some kind of governance structure, whatever that is? Our thought was enough of a structure to carry forward an agreed upon final plan. And then lastly, will we agree to end street homelessness by the 1st of November? Would we take on that audacious goal? Thanks.
And I see your hand, Donald. Just the one way that I'm thinking about this as I'm hearing this conversation, just to interject, is that if we can all agree that that audacious goal is something that we all would like to move in that direction, the details of how we get there are really going to be important. But I don't know that those details need to preclude saying that it's the goal. So just thinking off the top of my head, I wanted to add that. I'll go back to you, Donald, and then I know Sean had an additional question. I see Kevin's hand as well.
Yeah, I want to go back to when you was talking about men coming out the institution. Men coming out the institution, most of them choose not to take the programs that they have for them before they get out. We partnership up with DOC, and they inform us before their guys get out, and we set up a program that they have housing for a year that comes from the institution. And so the guys from the institution sends us letters so that we can start working on them, housing, jobs, which we do, and our partners know they're coming out the institution, and they're giving them jobs, and our guys are, performing. Some of my guys has been in the house for 4 years, and they can stay as long as they want to, and they're, we have some guys that have graduated with their families now, their kids, gotten their records expunged so that they have time, from the Justice Society. I was in the same boat 25 years ago. So, and this coming out made me see what other men went through when they got out. I beat my case, but still I was able to see on hands, guys going to prison, being set up, the whole 9 yards. And if whoever has men that are in the institution have come out and they having problems getting jobs, you can get in touch with me. Our partners take, if they have a sexual beef, then that's a problem. But anybody else, I don't care if they're a burglar or whatever. We got a guy that's a burglar, and they have him making all the alarms and stuff for the banks. So our partners give our guys a second chance. So if anybody has that type of problem, get in touch with me. Or anybody having clients in Lakewood, we just purchased a house in Lakewood. So thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Sean, I know you had something to add, and then Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I know this is just a startup. I'm just trying to I want to make sure I know where we, like, the whys about we're moving in this direction, and I'm not opposed to it. And again, this is me as personal Sean, not as Pierce County Sean. So Alan brought up continuum of care. It's been talked over and stuff like that. I know you kind of touched on it, Garrett and Maureen and Teresa. I don't know if you have more insight. Like, what would this organization do better? And where are those gaps definitively that you're seeing that you just are really like, we could do this better if we take control of this? And I'm curious if you have those in mind. One of my big concerns is, and again, I work primarily in the veterans world, and we know the veterans world. We know VA. Oh my gosh, the biggest bureaucracy on earth. It's hard to get them at the table, right? And so I'm worried if we have this entity that they may not be able to pull in some of those stakeholders that are like, hey, well, what authority do you have? So, I don't know. That's kind of one of the things I'm curious about.
Let me take that one, because others may have a similar concern. We are not proposing changing what's out there. We're proposing that we're going to build on what is good that is out there. But what we're saying is that there's a gap. And that if we're really going to end homelessness, which we believe we can, then we got to fill that gap, that leadership gap. And so, I mean, I think a lot of what is happening will continue to happen the way it is, except that we'll work better together on what's already good programming, good structures that are out there. But where there are gaps, there's this overarching plan, this overarching strategy that says, for the next Carolyn Reed who tries to figure out what's going on, there actually is a way to do that. For the next time that the city neglects to tell us that, yes, they are using FEMA money for congregate shelter right now, we've got them at the table in a proactive way. So we're not wasting energy saying, why aren't you using FEMA? That when somebody sees something on the street, one of the mutual self-help groups, one of the collectives, Food Not Bombs, whomever it is, who says, look, why can't you do something about this? We actually have a way to address that together. Now, right now, we've got two big for us working groups. One, the group that stays on every Friday morning to plan the next providers meetings. Always open. Understand that it doesn't work for everybody. They can figure out a different time if there are other people who want to be involved who can't do it then. It got us from when Garrett left his position at CCS through now. And we've got this steering committee meeting Wednesday afternoons. That's the combination of the folks who agreed to be an oversight committee to Kevin, because we'd never had a staff person before, and the folks who were part of the summit working groups. We just combined them. And instead of meeting every day and then every other day, now it's once. None of that kind of structure is cast in stone. People want to take on just literally on the street homelessness. And we set up a working group that does that. Anybody's welcome. If everybody looks like me, we do what we do with the other groups, and we go out looking for people who represent the diversity of the community of need and the community of providers and anybody else. And if somebody just wants to work on, just like we took the summit requests apart, and Janet grabbed healthcare, and Food Not Bombs came in, and the needle exchange. And now we got CHI Franciscan, and we got multi-care in a whole new conversation. I mean, and CMAR. And so what we're saying is, can we put a roof over this? And can we put enough structure under it to support whatever this turns out looking like, so that when any of us who hold the institutional memories and are putting our time in, whether we're volunteers or we're paid in a specific position, move on, that the work continues the way we've committed to having it continue. Things like support for small nonprofits, support for nonprofits that are by and for, led by communities of color, trying to get wages up for nonprofit frontline providers and benefits, so that these are jobs you can afford to raise your family on, which is not an issue for the government, folks. And it's not an issue if you've got another income in your household. But if you're the single income, you ought to be able to do this work and live on it. I mean, these are all pieces of what's out there that we've never had a way to just say, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this work. Remember when I said this before, we'll do it as well as we can for as long as we must. And what we want to do is go forward so we can do other work. So our work can be keeping people housed, so they don't end up becoming homeless either at the front end, because now we've got aggressive prevention programs in place, or at the back end, because we've got the continuing kind of appropriate support that people tell us they need, or that we realize that they need. So I don't know if that helps or makes it more complicated, but.
No, I appreciate it. And I just, to give some more context, and Garrett's been a part of the task force we formed. It's just so hard getting, especially the federal stakeholders at the table and getting those conversations rolling. And I think you guys have done, especially with the summits, have done incredible work there. And I think my biggest fear is that, that there will be too many not necessarily, there's too many organizations that when I'm trying to get these meetings with the VA, I'm also trying to help the COC get the meetings and help the coalition get the meetings. And then, they're just burnt out trying to just figure out what our infrastructure is like for ending ending homelessness in in particular. So yeah, I appreciate Maureen. Thanks for the answer.
And to chime in, we're filling a void. Yeah, could the COC do this work? Yep. Are they? Nope. Could the county be doing this work? Yep. Are they? Nope. Could the city be doing this work? Yep. Are they? Nope. Are we going to set this work down when one of those groups wants to stand up and do this work? Yep. Right? This isn't empire building. This is filling a void. And we're filling the void because no one else is. And, you know, and we're going to do it well because I heard a lot of feedback today about equity and that was lacking. And so we're going to make that change, right? Not to meet your needs, but to meet the needs you're identifying in the community, right? That is our commitment. And if the COC wants to take this on as a joint effort or as a major stakeholder in it, I'm all in, right? We do things until, right, a more formal group can do it, or we become that formal group long-term. This could be a 3-year effort and we get to stand down because other, perhaps better organizations are able to take it on. But until then, I've been asking, I've been hoping, I've been encouraging, as have many of us. And here we sit with no plan to end homelessness. And I think it's unconscionable. And so as I went through my contacts and talked to people across the span, it was obvious that this was important to a huge number of people. And if we didn't take it on, then who would? And that's where I sit. If we don't take this on, who will? It'd be great if Ari Medeiros with the UW Tacoma took this work on, and I've asked, and his plate is full, right? There is no one in the community that I've seen that wants to take this on the way that the coalition wants to. And so that's my sell. If not us, who? And this work matters. And Valerie you put everybody in shelter and then what happens? I don't know, right? But I know they're in shelter and someplace they belong. And is that a good use of our money? Well, I guess we'll find out. Like, we've not tried to shelter everybody. How does that impact permanent housing? I don't know. But even if you put that money into rapid rehousing, are we going to get them into apartments that don't exist? Right? I mean, those are interesting questions, but I just put it out. If not us, then who? Could the continuum of care take this work on? Could we be a body simply supporting the continuum? Great in my book, right? This is about getting the work done. And it gets done because we say it gets done and we bring everybody else along. If someone else wants to start taking the lead, I am following in step behind them. And by me, I'm talking a little arrogant there. We will, right? Like, we're not trying to create something that is better somewhere else and could happen, but we'll hand it off when we need to. So I'd like to call the vote. We had a call to question. I don't really want to go there. I'd love to vote. And if we vote no, that's fine. We can rehash it and try to build up the strengths. I think we'll do that no matter what. And so I would like to have a vote. We through this, and you can have a last word in there, Al. The way we'll be voting is through the reactions. There's the yes and no. In reactions, you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, right? The sort of place where you can raise your hand to do a thumbs up. There should be a yes and no option for you there. And so we would like to use that. So, Al?
Well, I was going to say that when I was in China, our tour guide commented that working with Americans is like trying to herd cats. And we've had much discussion, but I hear many concerns, but no opposition of significant, no major opposition. And I was going to move to call for a vote. So I second Garrett's notion. Let's get on with it.
And I would say that on my options for reactions, I have a thumbs up, but I don't have a thumbs down or a no option. I don't know if that's true for others.
Do you have a check mark and a red check?
I have a thumbs up, a clap, tears, a heart.
So if you're on a computer, we do this pretty frequently. Click participants and you'll see it under the list of names. You'll see yes, no, raise hand.
Thank
If
you.
you're on your phone, which I am, you just click the ... and then you'll see it's combined in the reactions.
Thanks. That's helpful, Megan.
Of course.
Could you put the actual question that we're voting for in the chat?
And note that some people did vote yes, but had to leave the meeting. It's in the chat.
Right. And Garrett, the intention is to kind of vote on all three with one yes or one no?
Correct. All three with one yes or one no.
Okay.
There's a question about who votes. You are not, unless you are designated to represent your organization, you're voting just as a person at this open table. Your position in your organization is irrelevant unless you have been charged to bring their vote forward.
Stay on longer than that short amount of time.
I know.
Really should have put like an actual poll in for this, huh, Rob?
And we still could if you want to do that real quick. The challenge is the poll questions probably can't, it might not be long enough to let us do all three.
We could just do voting yes or no.
Just write the poll as yes or no.
Yeah.
Do you vote yes? Do you vote no?
Let's see.
You gonna jump in and do that, Rob?
Yeah, I'm doing it now.
I notice it goes away after a little while.
Yeah, that's why we'll fix this.
Oh.
Let's see if this works.
Herding cats might have been a simplification.
Otherwise, we just keep clicking our reaction. Just keep doing it.
Just
Like
hammer on that, yeah.
Like getting an appointment for a COVID shot.
I'm getting close to getting there. Yeah.
Should we also add an abstention option? Like if folks want to abstain?
I can do that.
Yeah, that's always helpful.
Always building the plane while we fly it.
Well, I'm guessing that someone who wanted to abstain would just not vote, right? Because you don't have, it's not forcing us to vote.
Sorry that took so long.
Teresa, I think the abstention model lets us know that they weighed in and we're not waiting for them to respond. So that would be my.
It's a good thing that earlier group couldn't come today.
So I really want you to reach out to us if you voted no and talk to us about those concerns. Some of you have, and let's see if we can work to mitigate those concerns.
And while we're waiting, one of the things I wanted to just note and didn't have time to was something that makes me realize how much we do fill a void is seeing that the list of shelter openings was listed on the county's page. That's from our website, telling people to go to our website to find out what's available, as well as the Tacoma News Tribune did the same thing. So there's something that we've been recognized for bringing that we need to do more of. And I think this commitment is, if we pass it, is a sign that we recognize our continuing and important relevance to the community.
Mm-hmm. So do we want to wrap up the poll at this point, Garrett?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And I want to thank everybody for participating. I think this is it could feel a little bit like we were herding cats, as Maureen put it, but it's really important, and I'll hit the share results thing. Really important that everybody's voice is heard and that everybody's concerns inform how we move forward. So appreciate it. All right.
People on the phone, Rob, you want to read it for anybody on?
Oh, and I just turned it off. Here, let's see if I can get back to it. So the results were 43 yeses. That's 83% of those who voted. 52 people voted overall. We had 3 people who voted no and 6 people who abstained. So thank you again, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
And clearly we have a lot more work to do and
yes,
a lot more energy to expend, and hopefully address a lot of those concerns, all of those concerns that we heard during our conversation. So if we're good, I will move on to the next item in the agenda. Are we all good to go? Okay. So Tegan, I will cue you up to talk about the upcoming study session at City Council on February 23rd.
Hi, y'all. It's good to see everyone this morning. Friday. So excited. Anywho, so February 23rd is going to be the study session for the update on homelessness. I know that we know it, but it's coming. So be ready. So I'm just going to give you a real high level. I know we're running a little low on time. So we're going to be discussing, I'm just going to high level what it's going to discuss. So wait, you know what? I'm going to pause that before I jump into that. And I want to thank everyone for the amazing feedback I got on encampments last week. It was spectacular. I've been compiling it and looking at into some other documents, and I just am really, really grateful for that. So thank you all again. Now back to the presentation. So 23rd, we're going to discuss the emergency declaration and the response to date. We're also going to talk about our COVID response. There's going to be some high-level discussion about the investments in homelessness. We're also going to be talking about shelter inventory, beds, exits, utilization, things of that sort. We're also going to additionally talk about our winter shelters and the things that have happened for inclement weather and the warming centers. So you'll see quite a bit of information on that as well. And I think those are the major things we're going to be talking about. The draft homeless strategy is also going to be mentioned in there. As you know, it's still a process. We're still working through it. I was talking with Rob earlier that we're going to meet next week to really get that schedule. So you will know when we're going through the next steps and to frame it a little better. And I know, again, I'm still catching up on all the information that you guys have given me. So I'm still working through it as we're addressing other things. So I'm really looking forward to it. So on the 23rd, after the meeting, I will make sure to send a link out to the Homeless Coalition. So if anyone doesn't get to watch it that day, they can watch it later. If you have any questions, please send them to us. And hopefully it'll go well. I'm always the optimist.
Tegan, a basic question. What time on the 23rd?
It starts at noon.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for public comment?
Not on study session, no. Anything else? I see something about the pit. Yes. I know we pulled that data straight from the county, so hopefully that will be in there accurately.
Well, the reason why I say that, because during the last study session, there were some errors in the slide with how the pit was used. So yeah, I recommend reaching out to Garrett or me around that.
All right, thanks, Megan. I appreciate that feedback.
And Tegan, you're welcome to ask me as well as the lead staff for the pit. Feel free.
All right, thanks,
I'm here to help.
Valerie.
Hey, Tegan, I have just a follow-up to, I think, Carolyn, was that your question about public comment? While there isn't comment at study session, at City Council that evening, it is virtual forum, so you can speak on any topic and you would be welcome to discuss what you heard at the presentation at noon. So Tegan is right, and there's an opportunity if you would like.
Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. Well, thank you, Tegan. We'll look forward to hearing the presentation on the 23rd.
Absolutely, thanks.
Yep. So let's move on to our other government updates. And let's queue up Valerie. Do you have a moment to talk about what's up with the county?
Sure. Yeah. So since we're on the pit talk, we'll be having our point in time count 2021 results here very soon, next couple of weeks. As everyone remembers, we did a sheltered count only, so the data comes out of HMIS. We are already queuing up our 2022 homeless point in time count, which will include shelter and unsheltered. So I started working with the outreach teams today to determine locations, planning. We have to figure out PPE, like the whole 9 yards. So it's going to look a little different, but we know we will have to do one. So that will be the last Friday in January 2022, which is the 28th of January. So just so everybody kind of pre-plans for 2022. For rental assistance, the U.S. Department of the Treasury has still not released their FAQs. It is so extremely frustrating, and I understand they're very busy, I'm sure. I don't know what they do, but they're very busy. And so as soon as we have that information, we will be able to push forward. We have selected 8 providers for our rental assistance, and they haven't gotten official award letters, but they know they're selected because we don't know the dollar amount yet. So they know they're working. They know they are all selected to do this program. We have approximately just under 60 million. That's our ballpark figure, and so that's what we're working on as far as our plan goes. So the program, what we are doing starting next week is we actually are going to send out emails and letters to all of the landlords that we served last year, all the landlords we were collected from different agencies. So if you have a list of landlords that you can share, please send me names and addresses, because we are going to invite them to pre-register for the rental assistance program. That's going to speed up the process for them and for their households. So it's going to be fantastic. And then we will open the portal right around March 1st for clients to apply. And so all of that is just continuing to move as fast as we can. Our NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability for ESGCV, closes today at 4:30. That is not 4:31. That is not 4:32. It is 4:30. If it is after 4:30, it is not eligible. So please get your applications in and on time. And other than that, I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
I see Carolyn with her hand up. Yeah.
My question, Valerie, is again, I'm kind of not an expert in this, but when I ask for data and I look at PIT numbers, it looks like, the county has like 2,000 homeless or less. And then you ask for data on those that are in the system as homeless, and it's like 6,000. Is there any way that when we're having these discussions with these decision makers that we give them both numbers so that they're making decisions based on reality rather than a HUD requirement for federal funding?
Yeah, so the data you should always quote is the data out of HMIS, right? So the point in time count is a phenomenal tool for community education. It is a phenomenal tool for community engagement, getting folks who have never heard or experienced or thought of homelessness actually out in the field doing surveys. And then for those folks, it can be life-changing. That is the really good point in time count. Garrett and I are fully aligned, and it is not a good data point, right? Like, it is what people want to quote, but it is a snapshot. It is a moment in time for someone, if they're willing to do the survey, if we can even find them on that night. A couple years ago, it was like 40 degrees, and which was really warm for January. We couldn't find anybody. We drove around for 12 hours, and it was just, Rob, you were there. We were just boots on the ground trying to figure it out. So point in time count data is good for some regional approach. Like, we know we have really good data for point in time count with the Key Peninsula because they have a super strong team that goes out for that night. But overall, your data for HMIS is where you're going to want to use your quotes.
Maureen.
Valerie, thanks as always. So one of the things in my head lately has been this whole, do we have a countywide kind of eviction defense strategy? Now we know we've got, what did you say, 60 million, give or take, for rental assistance. We know we've got Tacoma Pro Bono, the resolution program. We don't know what the state is finally going to do, but is somebody convening all the players around on a countywide basis?
Not that I have heard. I did hear yesterday that there is a new limited landlord program that is expected to come from the state for those landlords whose tenants either aren't eligible or refuse to participate in a program, which we found actually quite a bit of last year, and they'll be able to apply for support and services directly to the state. I know that we are going to work, we have a mandate by the state to work with our sort of diversion, but Tacoma Pro Bono and other areas like that to prevent evictions. And so we'll have a mandated percentage that have to work with those programs. And then we are going to also have a notice of funding availability very, very soon for eviction prevention, for not just rental assistance, but that actual mitigation. And so all of those are still in the pipeline. Lots of moving parts, but I'm sure there is still more to come. And I'm sure there's a gap. So if there's still a gap and that you kind of see, send it to me in an email. You know how to get in touch with me, Maureen. And then we can work on who would the best point of contact be for that.
Everybody,
I see your.
everybody send it to Valerie.
Everyone.
Flood or email.
Just Google it. I mean, it's there. I see Sean's hand.
Yeah, to that point, Maureen, I would reiterate what Val just said. If you have advice on different stakeholders and different groups that you'd like us to engage with, the Human Services Department right now is coming up with a department-wide strategy, because broader than just rental assistance, there's all kinds of programs, aging and disability, veterans, stuff that's coming through this federal package. So there's a communication strategy in works, including potentially virtual town halls, working with stakeholders and stuff that we're working on as a larger department entity. And one of the questions going forward is, if this next stimulus package is coming through, we may want to get some more information on that. And we're working on that right now to know what other programs, because what we're trying to avoid doing is standing up town halls where we do a lot of like outreach and try to pull in people. And then we find out we have more dollars or more expansive programs we could stand up, and then having to try to re-inform and re-educate everyone. So we're working on that now and trying to skirt that line of, we're expecting, and I know you know because you're Marine, we're expecting additional dollars and additional programs. And so what we don't want to do is say, hey, rental assistance is for these people, or aging and disability assistance is for, let's say 50% AMI and 70 or older, and then we actually have funds that can get 60-year-olds and 100% AMI. So we're like in this weird nebulous right now that we're hoping, we're working on the strategy, but we're hoping to get more clarification before we start telling the public this is definitively what's going to happen, if that helps explain where we're.
That does help. My suggestion would be, before everything is cast in stone, take advantage of a coalition meeting for figure out the right question, or maybe we give you the question and ask for a small group breakout like we did with the encampments for Teagan. And just, we know some of the gaps from the last experience and some of the communication issues, stuff like that. Might be an easy way to fill part of what you're trying to do. And please, somebody figure out how to deal with all of the individual jurisdictions if they each end up with $400,000 again that they only want to use on rental assistance for the people of, Milton or something.
Hey, and to that point, Maureen, put that in writing, send it to me in an email so I can. Those conversations, we're telling them, it just helps us to hear from you all. And you're right. Maybe, Rob, we could talk about next week or the following, we can get on the agenda to talk about it. It's just, there's so much happening literally as we speak. I just got an email from Heather and our finance department. They're like, and it was different than what I heard on Wednesday. So we're just we're worried about putting out wrong information. And then that's circulating, and we're, the stuff, it's just out of our control right now. So I'm hoping to have more. And I think, Rob, if we can get on the agenda for next week or the following week to talk about feedback from you all, that may be valuable before we even start pumping out the definitive information.
Yeah, we can do that, Sean. If anything that can be helpful, if doing a 15-minute breakout group session can help inform, we're happy to do that. I just need help framing what those questions are before we get in the meeting, but yeah, why don't we be in contact?
Yeah, I'll reach out, Rob.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to move on. Rihanna, do you have any updates from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department?
I do have a couple updates. Hi, everybody.
Great.
First, I want to apologize to the group. I was here last week in the beginning and left abruptly without saying anything. And so I was here, but I wasn't here. And so I apologize. I will let people know in the chat box next time. Thank you, Janet. So my role is to help ensure equitable access to vaccine education. I'm not on the vaccine planning team, but we do talk and coordinate. So I'll put, we have community presentations that are already set up. We have distributable flyers for people to print and post at their organizations. If you're interested in any of that, let me know and I'll put my contact info in the chat box after I'm done. I do have an update from Jenny. She's on our healthcare coordination team, and let me just make sure I get this right. Jenny says that the local health jurisdictions are asking DOH for more specific guidance on phase 1B, tiers 2 through 4, to help prioritize groups. We aren't sure when we'll move to tier 2 and beyond, but we're wanting guidance to help with our rollout as far as vaccine planning. And as soon as we know more about guidance and timelines, we will share that info. And so that is Jenny's update. I also have, in my regular role, I work in the Healthy Homes program with the department. And last month, I shared that we were in the process of hiring a housing policy coordinator within the health department. And so we have hired that person, and that person will be starting around March 22nd. So looking forward to that person joining the table here. I won't make any commitments for that person at this time, but they'll be here. So those are all of my updates, and I'm going to put some stuff in the chat box right now. And so that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Maureen?
I've got one. Just looking across, not many of us are in my age group, but I've had my second Moderna shot and it bit back badly. And I can't imagine being homeless in a shelter or unsheltered and have the kind of response, 3-day response I had. So I don't know who has the answers, but that's my question. What is the health department doing to ensure that as people experiencing homelessness, whether they're sheltered or unsheltered, begin to demonstrate these responses, which are really awful? How are you going to handle it? You'd have to answer right now, but you do have to.
I don't have an answer right now, but thanks for bringing that up. That's a good question. And people are
you've got a fever that you can't stop as that sucker is escalating. And
yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine it being in a congregate shelter, or where are you going to get Tylenol in a congregate shelter? Where are you going to get an aspirin? You know?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
Who's going to let you sleep 24 hours straight, you know?
Maureen, would you send me that in an email so I can move it along?
Certainly.
Your question.
Great question.
Thanks, Maureen. I get my second vaccine today, so I know what to look forward to. Thanks, Maureen.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, my brother sailed through. I got the family response, apparently.
All right. Thank you, Rihanna. And we'll look forward to that information in the chat you're going to put there. Kenny, I know you said you had some additional updates for the city of Tacoma.
Hi, everybody. Sorry my camera's not on. Please just imagine the most attractive person you know and help my ego today. Just a quick follow-up to what Tegan was saying. Another plug for the study session on February 23rd at noon. Shaquetta Elder will also be giving an update on the Tenants' Rights Code. So if you're interested in that, there'll be a lot of information. And Shaquetta is going to come back on, I believe March 5th is currently the plan, Rob. And to get follow-up and actually help, that'll be an opportunity for folks here to help wordsmith and write the code with Shaquetta. If you've worked with her before, she really values feedback and really incorporates as much as she can. So I don't know if we'll do breakout groups or something, but we'll try to get as much feedback on updates that you need to see. Some important updates we'll be discussing, I think that this group will care about, is shared housing. That's going to be interesting, and there'll be other surprises too. So please listen on the 23rd and then give us your best thoughts on March 5th. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kenny. All right, and I don't believe I see anybody from the Pierce County Emergency Management Office on the call. If so, and you have the updates, let us know real quick. I am paying attention to the clock and it keeps running down and our time gets shorter. So let's shift over. Jan, do you have any updates for the Safe Parking Network?
I do. Things are moving along. Thank you. Colin sent me the update. South Hill Baptist is full and successful. They have successfully moved folks into housing from South Hill Baptist. Our second site on the east side has space available for people sleeping in their cars. So please contact Colin if you know of anybody who is sleeping in their car. Salvation Army Puyallup has applied, and so that may be a new site. Exciting. We're working through the application now, and we're working with one of the local colleges to add a site on campus. So things are moving along. We'd like to see anybody at noon on Monday who wants to join this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Next in our agenda, we have any critical advocacy updates from Maureen?
Just a couple. One is that we still don't, one is that the Biden relief package, which is what Valerie was alluding to earlier. So that should be voted out of the House by the end of next week. This is at the national level. Then it goes to the Senate. They work it out under budget reconciliation. We think the end result will be something like $19 billion in rental assistance. That is following the rental assistance that's already out there, plus about $5 billion for a special homelessness assistance grant and other assorted monies. The other thing is that the stimulus checks, so $600 checks, they're all out. So if you have people who didn't get them, you need to direct them or help them at irs.gov. And what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to file 2020 IRS federal taxes, even if they don't owe any, don't normally file, because that's what's going to trigger their ability to get the stimulus check. They weren't in the system. There are 9 million across the US, likely a few here. So, and if they don't have some kind of direct deposit with the IRS, now's the time to set it up before the Biden package passes, because there's $1,400 right now in the stimulus checks in that package. So we've got Seattle Credit Union. Al has reached out. He's got BECU. We already had Sound. Al's going to finesse that. And Harborstone and anybody else. Right now, the only online application is Seattle Credit Union. The others are in person. There's also a letter that has been sent by several senators to Treasury, trying to get Treasury to agree to make this next round of stimulus checks user-friendly for people experiencing homelessness, to get rid of some of the requirements about addresses, that sort of thing. So we'll see if Treasury does guidance that's more user-friendly. Some cases they'd have to override state law, get an exemption to a federal statute, so it's not quite so simple. I will send out, following this meeting, the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance's invitation to a 2/24, 5 p.m. webinar on a plan to prevent evictions and homelessness. And so that's it for right now. Thank you. Well, Perfect. It's not it, but it's it for today.
You can flood our email boxes after this.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Good to
know. Okay, next on the agenda, Kevin, are there any updates on commitments from the Safe Shelter Summits?
Yeah, Maureen referenced this earlier. We had a productive meeting with somebody from Tacoma Family Medicine looking at ways that health system might be open to working with us on a variety of issues, and that's moving forward. There's a group of us meeting next week from CCS, Tacoma Ministerial Alliance, Associated Ministries, looking at developing an outreach plan to work with churches on offering shelter for a family or an individual, kind of developing a protocol for that. The hotel voucher program, and Alan mentioned this last week, from CCS is up and running for inclement weather. And I've been working with some other local providers on trying to identify ways they can get some funding for some outreach efforts they want to do, or shelter efforts they want to do. The other thing is I did email all the mayors and the police chiefs in the county about our request for no sweeps during this time, and I heard silence, from everyone, which I assumed meant they were all in favor of that proposal, but I have not followed up with them individually yet.
I'm sure that's a safe assumption.
Yeah, I thought so.
Thanks, Kevin. So we've only got about 8 minutes left. I don't know, Garrett, if you wanted to highlight anything from the PC Homelessness or pchomeless.org website, or if we should just move into other items for the good of the order. I see you sharing, so that answers the question.
I'm highlighting. Yeah, I'll do
Perfect.
A 1 minute highlight. So
perfect.
This is our website. Hopefully you're all familiar with this. And if you click on the link on the green bar that says overnight shelter, you pop into our overnight shelter page. And I just kind of want to show a few things on here. It lists all the shelters basically that take walk-in or phone call or that sort. So shelters that are basically available for clients that you might be working with. And it gives you information. So this is one of the advancements here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Like you can see on Roosevelt Barracks, which is serves veterans that are homeless. It talks a little bit about how to connect with them. And it also shows their current bed availability over here, which is super handy. Thank you, Roosevelt Barracks, for keeping that updated. So again, this is sort of an evolving page, and I add features as I can. But it's good to know. So if you're looking for shelter for somebody, some of our shelters are not tracking availability here, but they have a way for you to get a hold of them. So, and if there's only 1 or 2 beds available, probably good to call, right? Shelters get busy, and updating this is more a daily task than an hourly task. But you can see that information. If you want more information, like you can click on the link, and it doesn't take you to their website, but it does take you to a little bit of a page that has everything I know about the shelter and things like what gender is served and the types of households. So here we have singles and couples without children. Oh, no sex offenders. Well, that's a bummer, not because they don't want to, but because of the location doesn't allow that on site at the veterans home. So it just gives you, oh, they've got showers on site. What type of mental health supports? Well, it's coordinated that way. So it's just a handy tool to find out a little bit about a shelter. And yeah, and basically it's not all shelters, but I do have a list of all shelters I know about. It's right here on this link. It's kind of hidden, but a list of all known shelter sites. And that dumps you into my list of everybody that's out there. So these are ones that want to be listed on the website or not. It's everybody. And you can look at things that are in development, like we talked about a couple sites that are hopefully coming online. Bethlehem Baptist is coming soon, in Shiloh. So a good place to walk around and look at things if you're looking for what's out there. As always, let me know things that are wrong or shelters I somehow haven't heard of. Thanks.
And you have some link with 211 on this?
Say again.
What was that?
Question was, do you have you got established a link between 211 and this information?
Oh, they know about it. So yeah, it's something they reference when they're looking for shelter, if that's your question.
Thank you, Garrett. That's an awesome resource. So we've got just a few minutes left before we'll shift to the planning for next week's meeting. Anybody have any items for the good of the order?
Rob, this is Julian. Hello, good morning. Good to see everyone here. I just put in the chat box to everyone our regular announcement for the next meeting of the Pierce County Accessible Communities Advisory Committee. We could help fund accessibility projects. So wherever there's overlap in these subject matter areas, it's quite possible we could help out. And we do have actually a deadline now, which is kind of twice a year, April 15 or mid-April, which is the direction we got from the Accessible Communities Subcommittee of the Governor's Committee on Disability Issues and Employment. So there's that kind of deadline going around, but the ACAC in Pierce County, its next meeting is March 9th. So I invite all of you to attend. You can express your interest to attend by emailing me. Thank you very much.
Sherry, I see you have your hand up.
No, I was so polite, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I'm getting used to all these functions. So as everybody knows, our 2 inclement weather shelters are set to close on the 28th. We have about 20 really wonderful, solid nonprofit workers. We provided training. James has lent one of his staff members to put together some curriculum for training. And just as we are meeting with all of our residents to create transition plans, we want to ensure that our 20 nonprofit workers go into employment. So if anybody is in need of workers, please let me know. We're happy to direct refer. Trainings we're providing, de-escalation, trauma-informed care. These have been some really solid people, and I would hate to see them unemployed. So if you have any need for homeless outreach workers or shelter workers or any frontline staff, please email me directly.
Thanks, Sherry. Carolyn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, first of all, I want to apologize. We had our training for volunteers last Tuesday, and I didn't put out the right link in time, except like 20 minutes before Teresa was able to do that. So anybody that had people sign up for that, our next one is March 16th. It'll be Homelessness 101 will be offered again, and also substance use disorders and motivational interviewing. So I'll send out, a little prompter on the general email at that time. The other thing is we're trying to keep this 1/10 of 1% in front of the county. I'm super happy to hear that Tacoma is considering it, and the county needs to continue to consider it too, because if we're going to house people, we need revenue. And we're trying to put a little brochure together, and I need a picture of someone that's been housed and a 1 or 2 sentence quote of how useful that was for them to be housed. So if someone could send me a picture and a quote, they'll get in our brochure, and I'm happy to share the brochure if they have any reservations about that. And we're also keeping a list of those that are willing to give a 3-minute talk to the county council on supporting dealing with the housing and getting revenue for housing. And if anybody's interested in supporting that vigil, we'd appreciate your name, and we can even tell you what to say if you'd like, but you can also, come up with your own support for getting revenue for housing.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anybody else with anything for the good of the order before we close up the regular part of the meeting? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your time and attention and energy this morning, and wishing you a happy weekend. Those of us who want to work on planning for next week's meeting, we'll take about a 5-minute break and then come back to talk through the agenda. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good weekend.